Hi, hello, and welcome back to my channel. I'm MJ, and this is Reading After Dark. Today, I'm going to be doing a video I'm actually really excited about, even though it's like halfway through October. Recently, I have gotten super into reading like horror books or, more in that like genre. And I've kind of wanted to talk about it a little bit more. I've also been like watching more movies and stuff. I thought it would be really fun to just kind of recommend like a bunch of things across the board: books, movies, shows, video games, and I even have a board game. I also tried to get like a little bit of something for everybody. So there's a wide variety here. Like it's not just supernatural horror or slashers or even like strictly spooky. Like it's a nice variety of things. So I really hope that you can find something in here that sounds interesting to you. And I'm like so fingers crossed that this video is coming up at least before Halloween. We're going to start with books. So the first one I have here is The Haunting of House Hill by Shirley Jackson. This is a classic and I just read this recently. And I will say I love the haunted house or more like gothic house spooky kind of horror story. I think it is so interesting. And my favorite thing about this genre is that the house is a character. It's really the center of this genre, right? Like, you have these people who enter this house and that's great, but it's really what the house does to these people. And the way that it goes about doing it is just always so great. And The Haunting of Hill House was like no exception. I really truly think this is a phenomenal characterization of that gothic creepy house. I think this house like is it for me. It's so perfect. And we watched the show right after, so that's also on this list. We're going to talk about the show in a minute because I have so many good things to say about the show. The book was really good too. I did give it a 3 out of 5 stars, which I know feels like kind of low for something that I'm recommending so highly and talking about, but I wanted to recommend it here because it is more on the classic side. So, keeping in tune with that like variety, a little something for everybody. I did think it was really good. I think what kind of like knocks it down a little bit for me is I felt as though it was a skosh lackluster. So if you're not familiar with the Haunting of Hill House story, basically you have this guy who's an anthropologist and he's heard of this house and how like creepy it is. And he likes to go to like supernatural places and, houses and try to see like some kind of supernatural event. He gathers this team of people, sends out a bunch of letters, a couple of people respond, and they all are meant to go live in the house for a little while and try to experience these supernatural events for themselves. So you have this team, you have one of the stipulations of the family who owns the house is that one of their own family members needs to be present. So you have a guy who's part of the family that owns the house, and then you also have the caretakers who like take care of the house, but never at night. They do not fuck around with this house at night. And you learn why so fast. So everything is told from our main character's point of view. And I've forgotten what her name is. I'm so terrible with names and I really need to get better about that. I feel like it's Eleanor. You're getting the entire story through her perspective and you just watch her kind of decline. You watch the house begin to consume her. And I think that's really fascinating. I'm not going to spoil anything for you. It's a lot of like repetition, I think, with some of the spookiness. So I think that's why it gets knocked a little bit for me. And I think I wanted the ending to have a bit more of a bang. I think it's still a good ending. There's one line in particular that I think is really eerie and really great, but like on whole, I just wanted a little bit more from it, but that's, just from like the story. I just want a little more from the story. The house though, perfect. Loved it. Next book. Ooh, okay. Sorry, I just got really excited. Next book is a new one. It's We Used to Live Here. I'll put the author up on the screen. This one's a new one. It came out just this year and I didn't realize that when I snagged it from the library. So it was like really cool, but also kind of devastating because I actually wanted more from the author. I was like, what else have they written? And nothing. They haven't written anything. This is their debut. Banger debut. So We Used to Live Here is about this couple that moves into this old house in the Pacific Northwest to like renovate it. And one night, the main girl that we follow from, God damn it, main character names. I've so got to get better about that. I'll put it up on the screen. She's home alone one night and she's like waiting for her partner to come home, but she's not home yet. So this family stops by and the dad of the family is like, I used to like live here when I was a kid. Do you mind? I know it's super weird and if you're uncomfortable, it's totally cool. I totally understand. But do you mind if I just show my family around this house? It's such a beautiful house and I grew up here and it's just really nostalgic. And she's like really uncertain uncertain, but then after a while she's like, they have kids, like how harmful could they really be? She's like, okay, 15 minutes. I'll give you 15 minutes in the house. And then they never leave. And it's so good. And like, it's just a bunch of wild, spooky shit starts happening. I think this book is so good. Obviously, it's got that big, like, what the fuck is going on vibes. And I love those vibes. They're like my favorite creepy, spooky. I want to be wondering the whole time what the fuck is going on. I love that feeling. And this book has that. I really don't want to say any more than that though, because I don't want to spoil it for you. I'm not going to say what genre of like horror it really lands in. I don't want to give that away. I feel like that's part of the thrill of this book, but I will say it's not super gory, if that's something that you're like against. I don't think this one's gory at all. Oh my god, next up. This next book is Uzumaki by Junji Ito. Woo, there she is. This is a graphic novel. I read this like 4 or 5 years ago now. It's been a few years since I've read this, and still to this day it haunts me. And I always tell myself like, oh, I'm gonna reread this one year in October because it's that good, and I can't bring myself to like come back around to it because it's just like it's burned so much in my brain. I always think I'll come back to it when I've like forgotten it a little bit. Haven't forgotten it, not even a little bit. This book follows this town that becomes infected by spirals, and I think that's all you really need to know. This one, it is a graphic novel. The art is really great. I'm going to try to throw up some panels that aren't like too awful. The art is great, and I do believe that Junji Ito is also the artist for his books. This is the first and only Junji Ito book I have ever read. I don't want it to be the last. They're just really expensive, and I just like haven't gotten around to getting another one. I think I'm also maybe not like fully over this one. This one really fucked me up. Definitely, if gore is like a big no for you, stay far, far away from this book. It's a really dark story. A lot of body horror. This is like a 4.75 out of 5 for me. And the only reason that it's not a perfect 5.0 is because it is not a collection of short stories. However, it kind of reads like that for a while, and it's not until like really the very end that the story like all kind of comes together. But it is very short story-esque. It's really about these spirals and how it is affecting people through the town. A really big part of this is that the spirals, like people in the town become super obsessed with spirals. Like it consumes their life thinking about spirals and becoming one with a spiral. Like it gets dark. It's very graphic. If you are really looking for something that's going to like consume your mind in the way that these spirals consume the minds of the people in this town, do give it a whirl. Ooh, give it a spiral, if you will. The next is The Sundown Motel. Okay, I will say I really liked this book while reading it. I think the ride, like the read is more fun than the like retrospective thoughts that you're going to have about it. And I give it like a 3.75 out of 5 stars. This is about this girl whose aunt in the 80s was working at this motel, and she went missing, just completely vanished, no body, nada, completely gone. And it's kind of this like black spot in the family history. Her mom never talks about it, doesn't want to talk about it. And she decides to go and kind of do some like years later investigation. She's really curious about it. She's fascinated by the story. So she ends up going to this town. She ends up getting a job at the same motel on the same night shift that her aunt had, and that's kind of her story. She's kind of like slowly trying to unravel what happened to her aunt. The other side of the story that we get is her aunt in the 80s. We see kind of what she went through, and we're seeing the lead up to the night of her disappearance. I will say that it has ghosts in it, but I don't think it's really a ghost story. And truly, I don't think the ghosts serve like the grandest of purposes. I do understand why they're there, and without going into spoilers, like I do get why one specific ghost is there and why that ghost's story matters. Otherwise, the ghosts kind of feel like they're there to distract you a little bit. But in reality, it's actually more of a feminist story than I thought it was going to be. It's not really about ghosts and spooky supernatural stuff. It's really about evil men who get away with really evil shit, and also a lot about how women were not in the 80s, and frankly are still not, super listened to too. It's a lot of commentary on like why it's just so unfair that we're like, women shouldn't walk alone or be in these areas, but we just don't want to put that same attention into focusing on men and punishing men who do really evil things so that they don't keep doing this shit. You know, that's kind of a lot what it's about. Very Bright Young Women vibes a little bit. I'm halfway through Bright Young Women and I'm loving it so far, and I would say they feel a little like samey. So if the ghosts were putting you off that book, don't let them. It's really not a big part of the book, but otherwise, like, it was pretty good. My biggest complaint is that I do think the niece's storyline is a little bit unnecessary. Like, it's kind of the boring of the two storylines. There's a lot of like plot points or even some characters that get thrown into the niece's story that feel a little bit ridiculous. It's that one thing where like retrospectively you'll be like looking back on her side of the story and you'll be like, what was the point of like this and this and this? Because it's you know, it feels like it's there to pad the book. The aunt's part of the story is way more interesting, and I do wish that the author maybe would have just like wrote her side of the story. But I get that she wanted the mystery of like, you know, what happened to her? You like, you know, there's supposed to be mystery throughout the book. Anyway, moving on to movies and shows. So this is the big one. I think this is the biggest category that I have. I think it's definitely going to be bigger than the video games. Oh my God, yeah. Movies and shows. Here we go. Let's start with a classic, because I just watched this movie all the way through for the first time ever, and I'm kind of shocked that it was my first time ever, but that's fine. Let's talk about Scream. This movie is a blast. Now, I know that this movie is really old. There's a few movies on this list that are old and you've probably seen them, so this is my encouragement for you to rewatch them. Or if you haven't seen them, this is absolutely my encouragement to give them a try. They are actually super worth it, even if you've heard a million times that they are. They really are. So Scream. I think Scream is the perfect blend of satire and homage. This movie is like way better than it has any right to be. If you are unfamiliar with Scream for some reason, it is very much a classic slasher, and it's about the ghost-faced killer, and it's, you know, guy dresses up in a mask and just kills girls, slashes them. It's not complicated. This is great. It's perfect satire because it is very much making fun of the classic tropes. I believe the movie came out in the 90s. I think it came out in the early 90s, and it is making fun of like 80s slashers, how they're, you know, they can be predictable. There's this great scene where there's this kid on the couch and he's your very classic, like, he loves horrors, he works in a video store, he like knows everything about the genre, and he's watching a scary movie and he's yelling at the character to turn around as the killer is behind him on the couch, like watching him have this ridiculous moment. It's very meta, if you will. But no, it's really fun satire. There's a lot of really goofy moments that are obviously meant to be poking fun at the slasher genre. However, it is also an amazing homage because it obviously knows the genre really well, and it has, you know, it like carries you through with a very loving hand of the slasher films as well, because the ending, if you don't already know the ending, I am not going to spoil it for you because I do think it is actually so genuinely really good. I did know the ending of this movie, and even knowing the ending, I still had so much fun watching that ending scene. I didn't really expect this movie to capture me as much as it did. And I kind of thought that, like, knowing the shtick of the film, you know, like the big plot twist at the end, I thought knowing that would make the ending like not nearly as exciting as I found it. I really like cannot say enough positive about this movie. Truly a fun time. If you haven't seen it, definitely do so. It's really fun. I haven't seen any of the other Screams. I think it would be fun to like watch them. I imagine that they just get like goofier and goofier, but this first one, A+ slasher, an absolute must if you haven't yet. Moving on. Okay, let's keep it in the vein of like old classics for a second, and we'll go to Alien. This similarly was the first time I had ever seen this movie. Scream, I think I'd seen like bits and pieces of it over the years, but Alien I had truly never seen before, and I really loved this movie. As someone who loves film and loves like the art of film, this movie is beautifully shot. The props are stunning. The acting is great. The script is solid. It's all around kind of a banger. Like, if you haven't seen Alien yet, do so. It's great. This follows a group of scientists who are, I believe, just like bringing a cargo load home, basically. And they find when they wake up from their cryo sleep that they're like a little bit off course, so they right in themselves. But there's a distress signal out and about, and they're like, well, I guess we kind of have to answer it. So let's go check it out. They go and check out this distress signal, and kind of unbeknownst to them, they end up bringing a creature, an alien, back aboard the ship. And the creature is like kind of hunting them. It's really tense, you know, there's a lot of like, how are we going to take out this creature? It's very visceral how this alien creature interacts with people, how it like kills people. It's so yeah, I really do think like this was solid. Another classic that I just saw for the first time recently. I think it was more last year, so not super recently. But I cannot believe it took me so long to watch this movie. If you haven't seen it yet, do absolutely. And that is John Carpenter's The Thing, of course. This movie is so good. I don't know, this movie is really good. It was a blast. I love it. The premise is these scientists are in the Arctic, in Antarctica, in the Arctic, I don't know, they're somewhere really cold. They're at one of the poles. Basically, one research facility uncovered something they shouldn't have, and another research facility that is there ends up getting horribly affected by it. If you're truly and genuinely not familiar with the premise of The Thing, I think going into the movie knowing exactly that is more than fine. If you are a little bit more familiar with the premise, then you don't need me to tell you the premise of it. It's really good though. You totally should watch it. I think the ending is perfect. I think it is so perfect. I think what's so great about this movie is that it's just that very classic, like, who is it? It's not who done it. It's who is it? Who's the bad guy here? I'm trying to keep it vague for like the 3 people who have not heard anything about this movie, because I just want them to experience it raw, you know? I always think it's fun to go into stories like this kind of not knowing like anything, because it just makes it a wild ride. And I think going in knowing stuff about it, still it's a very fun time. You're gonna have a good time. But I would pick the wild, like crazy, oh my God, kind of a ride any day over the like, oh, I know what's going on. I know what the gist is, you know? But those are just my feelings. Like, go forth and watch it. It's a blast. Okay, 2 other movies. I'm going to talk about them really quick because they're also like old and classics, and they're not quite spooky yet. After I talk about these 2 movies though, we're going to get into the like creepy, spooky, get under your skin horror shit. So Hocus Pocus, super fun. It's classic, it's iconic, it's nostalgic. You've probably already seen it. Go watch it again. It's a good time. And the other one I wanted to talk about super briefly is Interview with a Vampire. I just wanted to like bring this back into the zeitgeist because I know that the TV show has come out, and I think people are seeing that because it's like the newer one. And I've seen people talk about rereading or reading for the first time the book. I've never read the book. Sorry. I know that I probably should, but the movie, so good. It is very, very much so about the sadness and loneliness of the life of a vampire and what it would actually be like, what it would do to a person to live the life of a vampire forever. It's really good. I think it's like horror, but it's not really that horror-y. If you are into vampires though, or like that more supernatural side of things, I think it's a phenomenal movie. Of course, it's got banger actors in it. They give an incredible performance. It's really a good time. We'd follow this character Louis, who is turned into a vampire, and he fucking hates it. And then he meets another vampire, Lestat, who fucking loves being a vampire. He thinks it's the coolest shit in the world. And he like kind of teaches Louis how to live like a vampire, but it's also kind of a tragedy. I do encourage you to go watch the movie. I've not seen the show yet. I don't know if it's any good. I hope it's good, but I don't have the urge to watch it because it's given me a little bit like CW vibes. I don't know. You let me know. If it's CW. I don't even know. Maybe it's even on the CW. I don't know. You let me know if the show's any good, but the movie is a banger, and I just wanted to get my 2 cents out there about it. The Strangers. I hate this movie. I hate it for being so good. This movie genuinely kind of makes me afraid to ever own a house someday. It is about a home invasion, and it feels a little too real, you know? Like, oh my God, I watched it for the first time when I was super young, and then we watched it again recently with my little brother, and after watching it, I was like, I'm so grateful that I live in an apartment. I don't know that I would want to live in a It just feels too real that someone could invade your home and kill you. It's oh, it is good. It's like, it actually kind of surprised me rewatching it, being like, wow, for a movie with really truly the entire premise being like that you have this couple who is having a bit of an awkward night. So eep. They're staying in like a cabin out in the woods. Great choice, right? And these strangers start like knocking on their doors and shit. They're taunting these people. They're taunting them and scaring them and torturing them, psychologically torturing them while also eventually physically torturing them. It's bananas. It's a really good movie though. Like if you're into that kind of thing, it's really good. It does get under my skin a little bit. You watch it and you don't want to stay in an Airbnb for a while after watching it. You're a little like, ooh, that's a bit much for me. These next two movies, I humbly request that before diving into them, check your mental health a little bit, especially The Lodge. It's really good, but it is so dark, and I beg you to just give yourself a little bit of a check to try to go into this movie in a good place, because it's super fucked up. Like one of the more fucked up movies I've ever seen, and it's just for reasons I cannot spoil for you. So trust me when I say, because you're gonna hear the premise and you're gonna be like, I mean, that sounds like pretty basic. Trust me. Just trust. So this movie, check all the trigger warnings before you watch it too, please. This movie's really good. Like, this movie is about these parents who have split, and you can tell that it's really fucked up the mom. Like, it's really hurting her, and they have kids together. The dad has this new girlfriend. The mom doesn't really cope, and she ends up committing suicide. The kids are obviously like really torn up about this, and they kind of like blame the dad's new girlfriend a little bit for this. So they are all gonna stay in this cabin together. The dad has to go to work, or he has to leave for work. Like, he's gonna be there late. It's like a vacation. I think it's supposed to be like around Christmas time. And the kids and this girl go stay in this cabin together, and a bunch of creepy shit starts happening. And what makes this movie like extra chilling is that the girlfriend is a survivor of one of those like religious cults, a la the comic cult. Oh, what were they called? The comic cult, or like Jonestown, like kind of all of one of those like super religious cults that had a mass suicide, and she was like a survivor of that. Obviously a lot of trauma in her past, and some of that starts getting like drudged up, and there's a big kind of what the fuck is happening vibe. Really good. I think this movie is best watched twice because it's two different experiences, probably not in a row. You're gonna be feeling really weird after you finish this movie. Like, it's really fucked up, okay? Like, it really fucked me up. Next is hands down the scariest fucking movie I've ever seen in my life. I've watched it twice, and both times I watched it through my shirt. Like, I couldn't actually ever face the screen head on. It was too fucking scary for me. Even the second time that I watched it. The second time I watched it, we watched it with my little brother, because he's like really into horror movies in that way that little brothers always are. And we were like, okay, it's the scariest fucking movie you're ever gonna see, dude. So we watched it with him, and I think we traumatized him a little bit, but it's really good. This movie takes place during the pandemic, and I believe it was also actually shot during the pandemic. So I think this is like one of those best examples of low budget horror sometimes being the best horror. Like, it's really solid. It takes place entirely through webcams, and it's about this friend group that decide to like get together and do this seance together, because like it's 2020 and there's nothing better to do, so they all get together and do a seance. And of course, they super do not take it seriously at all, and shit starts happening. Honestly, the scariest movie I've ever seen. I simultaneously love and hate watching this movie because it's so good. Like, the scares are aces. It's wildly like well made. I mean, it's really fun, and I actually think the webcam element. Now, this is the only webcam movie I've seen. I know there are others out there. I think there's like Unfriend Me or something was a big one. I know there are others out there. I cannot say whether those are done well. I can't say that this is like continuously done well, but for this movie, the perfect format, and they do such an excellent job of incorporating that element and just making it extra creepy. Like, you would think that a webcam horror movie probably wouldn't be that creepy, or that it'd be really gimmicky or something, but this one, oh my God, it's really good. It's just also really scary. That is absolutely the scariest movie that is on this list. Let's get into TV shows. I mentioned the book, The Haunting of Hill House. So let's talk about the show, The Haunting of Hill House. Listen, the show's really fucking good. It's really intense. Not only is the show very like spooky and scary, like it does the scares really well, but it's also really emotional. Like, I sobbed during this show. I did not expect for it to make me cry as much as it did. Both me and my boyfriend were like sobbing on the couch at the end of it, and we were both like shocked. Like, that's just not what we expected going in. So if you're not familiar, The Haunting of Hill House show, incredibly different from the book. The elements of the house are very much the same, which I love. I think it's like such a beautiful touch, and it just like really goes to show that the house was created. Shirley Jackson did such an incredible job creating this house and these vibes and like what's so spooky about it, that I kind of love the idea that you can plop various family stories in this house, that like you know, authors can take it and create a history within this house. I think that's really cool. This show specifically is about a family that moves into this house and they're like trying to renovate it, right? And of course, spooky house, a bunch of scary stuff happens. You know, when the show starts, that the mom died in this house. The night that she died was like a really bananas night, and the dad took the kids out of the house really quickly. He was like, we gotta go. We gotta get the fuck out of the house. Mom's not doing okay. He rushes them out. So you get these two timelines of the past of them like moving into this house and kind of like everything leading up to that night. And then you also get the modern day, which is these kids like dealing with the trauma of living in that house. So it's really interesting. It's very much about trauma. And I think that like, honestly, horror can be such an incredible genre for trauma. Truly. I just feel like I could talk about it for hours and hours, but I don't want to spoil anything. Oh, okay. Oh yeah. One last thing that I want to say about the show before I move on is to always pay attention to the background. There's always a fucking ghost. Like, whenever you're in that house in all of the past, when the family's like growing up and living in the house, it is crazy how many times there's a freaky fucking thing in the corner just like staring at the characters. It's honestly amazing, and I love how it can make these really innocuous, mundane, or even like friendly scenes really sinister, because there's just something like sometimes you're just like waiting for some shit to happen. Moving into the final two shows, not going to talk about them too much because they're both incredibly popular. I just wanted to like give my 2 cents about why you should check them out. The first one is Yellow Jackets. It's about this girls' soccer team that their plane goes down over like the Canadian Rockies, I think it is, or like somewhere in Canada in the mountains. It goes down. This is also a like split into 2 timelines stories. So you're watching these girls trying to survive in the wilderness. And then you also have the modern day, where you have some of the girls who have survived, and some stuff is coming to light about that time when they were in the woods, and they're trying to kind of like hush that. What I love about this a lot is obviously it's like freaky. There's a lot of like supernatural kind of freaky shit that's going on, but really specifically, a lot of the supernatural freaky shit is centered around this one girl, this one character, Lottie, who is schizophrenic. And of course, she runs out of her meds while in the woods. And so there's a lot of stuff where it's like, is this girl just like schizophrenic, or is she actually seeing shit? Is there actually something going on? And I really love that. I love that element to it. I think it's really great. This one is very gruesome, so if you are anti-gruesome, maybe don't watch it, but otherwise, super solid. Do give it a shot. I'm sure you've heard of it, but like, if you haven't, do try it. Okay, lastly, this is the last show that we're going to talk about. This is the last thing we're going to talk about in this section. However, I'm going to talk about it more in the next section, because that is The Last of Us. I truly believe that The Last of Us is the most beautiful story ever told. If you haven't seen the show, I highly encourage you to do so, but more than see the show, I really encourage you to play the games. I think the show is a phenomenal adaptation, like a truly incredible, wonderful, stunning adaptation. Could not have asked for better. I love that there are new things for fans of the game to enjoy and still feel like they're getting something new. All of the right story beats are still there and they're hit so well. So truly cannot recommend this enough. Like if you've been living under a rock for the last couple years and you somehow have missed the hype around The Last of Us and you don't know what it's about, it is a zombie apocalypse story, but that's not really what it's about. Hi, editing me. I realized while editing this that I got stuck on like the next sentence that I try to do here. There's like a full minute of me like trying to say it and I couldn't get it out. But then when I finally did get it out, I completely forgot to actually tell you what the plot of this show / game is. It's basically about Joel, who's kind of this curmudgeon smuggler, and he has to, or he's tasked with smuggling Ellie to this group because she's immune to the virus and they're trying to make a vaccine for her. So that's basically the plot. It's very much a love story and it's very much about the people that we love and the lengths that we're willing to go to for the people we love and whether or not those lengths are always morally good. And big fan of both The Last of Us Part 1 and 2. I think they are beautiful stories together. I think they're devastating. They're so incredible. And I want everyone to play the games. I think the games are so wonderful, but I put this on the show side because if you're not willing to play the games or even like watch someone online play the games, then do check out the show. I'm so glad that it has a really faithful and really incredible adaptation, but I cannot emphasize the importance of spending like 60 hours with these characters in their story. I mean, the way you feel about them is just so intense, and the way you get committed to the story is so intense. So The Last of Us, both the TV show and the video games, leading us into the video game section of this video, of course. I really cannot recommend The Last of Us series enough. Like one of my favorite stories of all time. And that brings us into video games and board games. So we'll start with the board game. I just wanted to throw this in here because I do know that not everybody plays video games. Of course, not everyone plays board games either, but board games are really fun and they're universal. So Escape the Dark Sector and Escape the Dark Castle, fabulous games. I really love these games for a myriad of reasons. One, because they're really fun. The art is stunning and you can play them by yourself or with other people. I don't know if that's sad or not. That's one of the reasons I like it, but it's cool that you can play it by yourself. This is a game where essentially you are trying to escape a castle or a sector depending on which version of the board game you get. They both come with I think 3 expansion packs each, which are also really fun and add new like rules and elements to the games. I'm not going to get into the rules of these games. I'm just going to give you the brief like what they're about, but they're super vibey. They are very creepy. They tend to be more on the like horror spooky side of things. They can be a little gruesome, which is really fun. You're trying to escape this dark sector. You are a prisoner and you start the game by getting out. Now, I will say I have never beat this game before. I've played it with my boyfriend. We've played it with a bunch of people and we've never beaten it. And it's really, really hard. It has an also really wonderful cyclical nature to it, a very like roguelike nature if you're kind of into video games, where you are, of course, a prisoner who's broken out of prison and you're trying to make your way through this sector and trying to escape it. And at the end of the game, if you lose, then you just become a prisoner again and the game starts over and you like bloop, go back to the beginning. Because we're good little citizens, we've never actually even read the card of like what happens when you win. So I don't know what happens when you win. I would love to know what happens. I'm sure you escape and it's really cool. But basically you have like character cards, you have some character stats, and then the actual game is all done in cards that you flip over. So you have a stack of cards in the middle and you pick one up and you read it, and it can be like an event or a fight or just something really cool. So there's a lot of reading involved if that's like not your thing, but also if that's not your thing, what are you doing here? That's what my channel's about. But honestly, like super, super fun. I really do recommend it. Moving into video games, of course, I know that there are a ton of horror video games out there, and I just want to say now, I have not played 99% of them. It is not that I am adverse to horror games for like any reason. I actually think they're so fun and so cool, and I really want to play more of them. I just haven't yet. So please don't get mad at me. I'm just gonna recommend like a couple more. So if you don't see things like Silent Hill or Resident Evil or freaking Dead Space, like it's not because I don't think they're amazing or worth being on this list. It's just that I haven't like played them. So sure, Outlast. Oh my God. Okay, I have not played Outlast, but I did watch my boyfriend play like 2 hours of Outlast, and it's terrifying. So I lightly recommend that one, I guess. Oh my God. That one's crazy. I think he was doing Outlast 2. You're a journalist who's trying to make his way through this like, I think this one is like a psych ward, and the only thing that you have is like maybe like a flashlight. Like you're not given weapons or anything throughout the entire game. It is very much the vibes of like you just have to run and hide from things. There's never a point where you like fight something, from what I understand. So scary. So absolutely, I mean, definitely recommend. I haven't like played it all the way through or anything, but I do recommend that one. That one just popped into my head. This one, Alan Wake 2. This is actually the entire reason that I wanted to make this video, because my boyfriend and I just finished Alan Wake 2, and it was so fucking good. I said while he was playing it, it's the kind of story that's so good that you get mad because you feel like you will never make something this good. And it's so good too. Okay, here's the deal. I do play video games. I love video games, but my boyfriend played this one because I'm a bit of like a panic gamer. So sometimes when there's a game that I really want to play and a story that I really want to see, it's just better if like he plays it and I like watch and we hang out together. Okay, hi, editing me really quick. I hate the fact that I feel like I have to justify this, but because I am talking about video games and that community can sometimes be very like gatekeepy and mean, I just wanted to like, I guess, re-clarify. My boyfriend and I love to play games together. Sometimes we'll play like things like Baldur's Gate together and it's really fun, or Divinity together and it's really, really great. Sometimes he will play a game and I will watch, and sometimes I will play a game and he will watch. I don't know. I didn't want to like start getting comments of, it doesn't seem like you even play video games. Like I do. I shouldn't have to qualify that or state that just because in this video a lot of the games that I mention are ones that I watched my boyfriend play, but it is largely just because we both really love video games and it's a fun thing that we can do together. So I just wanted to clarify that. Like I said, I shouldn't have to qualify it, but I feel like I do because I just don't want to get the comments that are like so unnecessarily hateful, and people who are like, you don't get to talk about it if you didn't actually play it. Okay. So that's my piece. Going back in. I think I will probably go back through and play Alan Wake myself now, but I just wanted to like see the story in its completeness before trying to play it on my own. Anyway, with that said, it's very artistic, so I think it's like, I honestly don't even know how to express this game. So, okay, I haven't played the first Alan Wake, unfortunately. I probably should, but the second Alan Wake, I don't think you need to play the first one to understand or even like the second one. Really, I cannot recommend it enough though. So fun, so good. This one follows a detective and a writer. The detective, Saga Anderson, is making her way through this town trying to solve these like cultish murders, and you start realizing that they actually are following this story that Alan Wake is writing. And then you also get Alan Wake, who's stuck in the dark place, and the story that he is writing is coming true like as he's writing it, and he's trying to write himself out of the dark place, but it's very twisty and very strange, and it's like on a loop, and he's done this before a million times, and so he's trying to figure out what he keeps doing wrong and how he can get out of here. And it's so good. It's very artsy, it's very loopy, and I mean artsy in that like there's this one part of the game that I really love, where there is essentially a short film in the video game in this theater. You're in this theater at one point, and you could probably just walk out of the theater and not watch the short film, but I think that's really cool. There are a lot of scenes, like a lot of the cut scenes that are done with actual real people, which I think is really cool. It's just a really stunning game all the way around. It was so much fun to play. It's also very creepy. I think the jump scares like are honestly like well earned. There's a lot of moments where like the anticipation is honestly what kills you more than anything. There are a few jump scares that get you so good because the game knows how to time them. It knows like you're so coiled up and it knows when to spring you, and that's just so good. It's so well written. It's so much fun to play. The dialogue is great. It's funny sometimes. It was honestly a 10 out of 10 game for me. It was so good. I low-key, hot take, should have won Game of the Year in my opinion, but anyway, that said, and I love Baldur's Gate 3, okay? I really do. It was a great game. finally, the last thing we're going to talk about is probably honestly like one of the more absurd things that we're going to talk about in this video. Probably the most absurd thing that we're going to talk about in this video. But if you've not yet heard of Doki Doki Literature Club, then you should play it. Honestly, I think this is kind of a fun one for even if you are not someone who's super into video games, because it's entirely a text game. You're reading the entire thing. It's just a visual book basically, because you're not like doing anything. Do you recommend if you are going to play it? It's probably fun to play by yourself, but I did play it with my boyfriend. I played it. I hit all the buttons. Like I said, you don't really play this one. So this one's really great. Listen, this one, when we went into this game, we knew preemptively that it was a horror game, but we also knew that it kind of structures itself like those, I don't know what the name for them is, so I'll try to like look it up and stick it somewhere. It displays itself like that, like one of those story text games where everyone's really thirsty for you and you get to, you know, live your anime dreams. So when you first start it, it's very much like that. And we went in knowing that it was a horror game, but it is kind of like that for a long time. So we were like, did we just get duped into playing one of these like thirsty anime games? But no, it is a horror game and it is so well done. I really loved it. Essentially, you play as this guy who's joining this literature club, and it's all girls in the literature club. And one of them is like your longtime friend. All of the girls are super thirsty for you. They're like really interested in you, and you play through like normal. And then some pretty crazy shit happens. I don't want to spoil anything for you because I do actually think it's really fun if you just kind of go into it not knowing anything. I swear it is a horror game. I know that you're going to be playing it for like a certain amount of time and you're going to be like, is there anything? It's like, what is happening? But I swear it is a horror game and it is super fun. I do recommend it. It really is a blast. It's fun to experience with somebody else. Okay, those are some of my spooky October recommendations. That's everything that I got for you. I feel like there are so many other recommendations out there. Like all week I've been thinking about other stuff that I've been like, oh, should I add that to the list? But I knew this list was already super full and this was going to be a really long video and I didn't want it to be like stupid long. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope that you watch or rewatch one of those movies or shows. I hope you play one of the games and read one of the books. I just hope in general that you have a really good time. Let me know in the comments down below what some of your favorite horror, thriller, creepy stories are, and I will see you guys next time with another video. Goodbye. Let's try to get some thumbnail shots for editing me now that I'm thinking about it. Okay. Nope, definitely not that.